Welcome to Socialcast, your go-to place to learn about marketing, the latest social media news, and insights. Brought to you by Social Bakers.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next podcast episode. Today, we're speaking to Gabriel Ehrlich. Gabriel is the founder of Remotion Digital, which is an advertising agency focused on LinkedIn marketing. And LinkedIn has become a tremendously important channel for, of course, B2B marketers, but increasingly more for B2C marketers. And this episode is packed with insights from Gabriel on how to best leverage this crucial channel. But there's one thing to bear in mind. This was recorded right before the entire world came to a halt. That's before the coronavirus pandemic. And you may see a lot of people in the background if you're watching this on video. And that's not the case currently in our office. We're still working from home in 50% some capacity. But anyway, let's hear more from Gabriel about LinkedIn marketing. Gabriel, welcome to the Social Bakers podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Really good to have you here at the Social Bakers offices in person. We work together online a lot. You've been helping us do LinkedIn ads for a while now. And it's good to see you in person.
Yeah, you too, man. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. By the way, the reason you're here, and so just our audience knows and why it's so busy behind us, is that we have the global sales kickoff at Social Bakers, and that's why we have Gabriel in our offices. But maybe, Gabriel, can you tell us about your journey in B2B marketing, and how did you end up founding Remotion Digital?
Sure, I'd love to. So I kind of ended up in this job by accident, to be honest. You know, I never planned to open an agency, let alone a B2B marketing agency. But I was doing all sorts of work and jobs, and I kind of ended up in Tel Aviv. There's a very strong startup culture. So I think it's, last time I checked, the country with the third most companies on NASDAQ after US and China. So, and it's, a country of 8-9 million people. So there's, pretty strong startup culture there. And for me, that was like the dream. I wanted to have a startup. I wanted to, be a startup founder and, like Mark Zuckerberg, have the big exit. And, for me, that was what I'd been dreaming about. But I didn't really have the skills. I wasn't a coder, or, I didn't really know anything actually about starting a startup. But, and I got into marketing before that, working in like the online gambling industry. So
Interesting.
So there's also a pretty large online gambling industry in Israel, which, interestingly enough, is one of the reasons why Israelis are so good at performance marketing. Because I won't say we invented it, but back in the early 2000s, these were the guys spending tons of money on ads for the online casinos. So dealing with, millions and millions of dollars of budget back in 2005, 2006 was very rare. And so you have this whole generation of performance marketers that kind of grew up around then and, saw these crazy volumes of traffic. And you kind of have these aha moments. You're like, oh, conversion rates, oh, click-through rates, and you kind of get it, and it snaps together, like the Matrix, I know Kung Fu, I know conversion rates.
But what year are we talking about here?
I'm kind of all over the place with my timelines here. So I actually started my own startup. It was called Stats Horizon back in 2009, which was basically, I wanted to get away from the online gambling industry. And I knew a little bit about affiliate marketing, and that was sort of my thing. And so I opened this startup for, basically, it was a business intelligence platform for affiliate marketers, for affiliate marketing agencies, actually. And I got a friend who was a programmer, and we built it, and we got this Ukrainian coder to do all the front end and like the whole thing, yeah. And I went to the States, and I started selling it to affiliate marketing agencies, and it was actually going okay. But eventually we kind of hit a plateau, and I didn't really know anything about running that kind of business, and eventually we had to stop it. But it we did it for about 3 or 4 years, but that's how I started to learn about B2B marketing. That's when I started reading about it and getting really interested in it and saying, okay, well, I have this B2B business. I have to, market it to not consumers, to other businesses. I started reading about it. And this is like 2011, kind of the beginning of, this is where you start to see the beginnings of like inbound marketing and HubSpot really kind of investing in their content and trying to get people to think about, how people should be, how you bring people to the website and SEO and email marketing, all this stuff. And so I started to get really interested in that. When I got out of that, and I went back to work, I found myself working at an agency, a local digital agency, and also found myself there in the B2B department of the agency. So everybody else was dealing with, consumer and automotive and with big banks, like these big local companies, and I was dealing with like the startups, which at the time wasn't a big part of that agency's business. And while I was there, that started to really blow up. Like these local startups, just to name a couple now, I don't know if you know Outbrain, they were one of our clients at the time. So like suddenly, they're blowing up and I'm, responsible for their digital marketing. That was really interesting for me. So I started to understand, kind of the picture started to come together for me. And at that time, this is now 2014, 2015, is when LinkedIn actually opened up their platform for self-serve. So before that, it was all, IOs and insertion orders and like, okay, we want to spend $30,000, $50,000, and this is the audience. And you'd have to send them this form and like, okay, you sign it and kind of really old school, media buying. And around 2015 is when they opened up the platform for self-serve. And me being the guy at the agency responsible for B2B, I was like, okay, we should be doing this. And all of the PPC guys were like, no, it's too expensive. We don't want to do it. And I was like, no, we're doing it. We have to figure it out. And that is when I started playing around with LinkedIn. And then when I left the agency in 2016, it was, I worked very briefly for a startup. I was like, okay, I'm going to do the startup life now. And then as that was happening, people were starting to ask me about LinkedIn ads. I was starting to I guess without me even trying, get a reputation around that, because I'd done it, and not a lot of people had been doing it. And just, people I knew, friends and acquaintances and old colleagues, they were like, okay, I remember you mentioned that you've been, playing around with LinkedIn ads. Can you help us out here? And it really just started off as a side gig, nights, weekends, just trying to help people out with their LinkedIn ads. And then pretty soon it became my, full-time freelancer gig. But I never intended for that to be my business. And now it's just sort of taken up a life of its own.
Yeah, and you seized the kind of the day and took the opportunity.
Yeah. I think, at the end of the day, you can wake up in the morning and say, well, I want to go here, I want to go there, but sometimes you're like, you're right here and this is what's happening right now. And you just kind of have to, go with the flow.
Yeah, but by the way, we had a very similar sort of response for when we started with LinkedIn many years ago. We were like, this is way too expensive, not for us, whatever. But maybe that's actually a good point to start. Is it too expensive? Is it for some companies? Is it, how do you start? How do you kind of set up your start on LinkedIn with reduced risk of failure?
Yeah, so just in terms of talking about the cost, LinkedIn is, it's relatively more expensive, yes, when you're looking at the cost per clicks and CPMs. But if you're interested in a particular audience, if you're interested in companies from a certain industry, if you're interested in specific job titles, and you're interested in companies of a specific size, which most B2B companies are, then if you're looking at relevant clicks versus the other platforms, it's actually a lot cheaper. Because if you're comparing it to Google or Facebook, then there's no comparison in terms of saying, okay, we're only interested, let's say, for example, I have some clients who are cybersecurity startups, and they're only interested in, for example, companies over 1,000 employees in the US, in finance, hospital, like industries that Their cyber infrastructure is very, very important for them to maintain. And they're only interested in the information security, information technology security guys in those companies. Those are very expensive clicks. They're actually some of the most expensive clicks on LinkedIn. We're talking like sometimes it could be $15, $20 per click. And even then, compared to any other platform, the cost per relevant click is actually cheaper if you're really going after a specific segment.
Yeah, that's a really I think valuable way to think about this problem. But it's kind of interesting how our audience will react to this podcast because I think a lot of our listeners come from the B2C world, and perhaps they have more experience working, like you said, with Facebook, Instagram, maybe Google. How should they think in terms of kind of adding LinkedIn to that mix?
Yeah. So I mean, just from an organic perspective, in general, LinkedIn is having a bit of a moment right now for a variety of reasons. I think, one, there seems to be some sort of retreat from Facebook and Instagram. I think people are a little bit burned out from those social networks, a little bit too much politics. Right. I think also just in general, like, for me, I'd rather spend time on LinkedIn and network with people who can, improve my business skills, that can connect me to relevant people in my industry, provide value to people, than be arguing about, Donald Trump on Facebook, or, uploading pictures of clouds on Instagram. So for me, at least, I've seen that, like, the time spent on LinkedIn, for me, if I'm just going to be on social media, I'd much rather be somewhere where there's value for me as a user. And so just, regardless of my agency of emotion, I feel like there's something going on there in terms of the social engagement, and the numbers are actually there. Like they're record-breaking user numbers, record-breaking engagement numbers as well. It's also still one of the only platforms where you can, as a user, get a lot of virality. Like, you can create a great post and you'll get some engagement, and your post can be reached by, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people outside of your network. And you get great analytics on this as well. It'll tell you which are the companies that are clicking through, the cities, and this is like, it's great for marketers. But I think also more than that, it's great for organizations. So even if you're B2C and your customer, your end customer, is not necessarily going to be let's say other organizations, you're still interested in the people who are on LinkedIn from a few different verticals. First of all, there's employer branding, right? Yeah. If you are any sort of reasonably sized company, you're competing in the job market, and those people on LinkedIn are actively sometimes looking for work. The way that your company presents itself on LinkedIn is a big part to how people are going to be making a decision of whether or not to work at your company. Showing not just like, hey, look at this great, sales kickoff that we're doing. Look how fun it is to work here. But also just people kind of showing off, like, what life is like at the company. I think, and what the company believes and what the employees believe, and how they think about the work. I think it's a great opportunity for, organizations and the people that work in organizations to sort of share their work philosophy. We don't believe in this, we don't believe in that. This is how we see the future of cybersecurity, of social media marketing. I think, like, if you're like me, I like to talk about work a lot, and nobody of my friends on social network want to talk to me about work. But I can go onto LinkedIn and I can write a post about what I think is going to be the future of, SDRs. And people will respond to me, and we can have an interesting conversation about that, which creates engagement, which creates some sort of presence for my brand on LinkedIn. So there's that. I think for sales as well, like, I think you could ask every single one of these sales guys, what is one of their top 5 tools that they're using on a daily basis, and it's going to be LinkedIn, and it's going to be Sales Navigator. So they're there. They're spending time there, they're engaging there, which means that they're also representing the company. So that it could be B2B, but even if it's B2C, like finance, if it's insurance, if it's automotive, You should be having a presence there. And then ultimately you have the marketing as well, like how we are presenting ourselves on LinkedIn. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, there's something really nice and clear about the intent of people who go to LinkedIn as opposed to Facebook. Sometimes I'm not sure what kind of habit they've developed on Facebook and why they go there, but with LinkedIn, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Maybe let's dive into a bit more technical stuff, if we may.
Yeah, of course. Please.
So if you're a company that wants to consider LinkedIn really seriously and you're stepping into the game, what are the steps you need to have in place in order to scale that?
Right. So budget helps. I think the most important thing that you need, if you want to scale on LinkedIn and you want to really have an ROI positive ad activity on LinkedIn, is you need to really understand the difference between LinkedIn and other channels. So similarly to Facebook and Instagram, it is a social channel. Mm-hmm. It's not like Google. People aren't actively searching for your solution. Google. People aren't actually actively searching for your solution or a solution like your solution on LinkedIn, at least right now. That might change as well. But it means that you're coming to them with a push advertisement. It means that you've interrupted their daily routine and said, hey, why don't you click here and we can tell you a little bit about ourselves. And so I think the first thing that organizations need to take into consideration is that the intent level is going to be softer. It's not going to be hard intent. It's not going to be I'm looking for a social media solution. I'm not looking for a cybersecurity solution right now, but the profile is great. Like if you're going after social media marketers, you're going to get them on LinkedIn. You're going to get them to be engaged, and you can actually create, I think a good way to look at it is the purpose shouldn't be awareness. The purpose shouldn't be branding, but you get that effect as well. So yes, you get the performance, you're going to get the clicks, you're going to get the leads, you're going to get the MQLs, the SQLs, the opportunities, but you're also getting in front of your core audience on a daily basis with your ads, day after day after day with your logo. It has an effect. Yeah, absolutely. That's the core basis of all advertising is you're hitting them again and again and again with your message, with your logo, with your presence. So by the time, even if they never clicked on an ad, by the time they see you at an event or they talk to one of your reps, they're going to be more familiar with you. Another thing to take into consideration is that infrastructure. All of that infrastructure. So sometimes I'm working with startups that, it's like a 10, 15 person startup and they don't have all of the infrastructure in place yet. So they're getting leads and the leads are going directly to, the co-founder or, the VP sales, which is great, but it means that the follow-up isn't going to be as fast as it needs to be. It isn't going to be as professional as it needs to be. It's not going to be as strong as it needs to be. And so having all the infrastructure in place is really, really important. You also want to have that, if we're talking about startups, if we're talking about software as a service, you kind of want to be at that place already where you have your product market fit. So your messaging is correct. Your landing pages are strong and convincing because everything that isn't on point when you're doing that is going to cost you because the advertising is so expensive. You don't want to be making too many mistakes. You don't want to be at a point where your messaging is weak, your positioning is weak, and so you want to, when you're doing it and you're spending a lot of money there, you want to be coming strong.
Yeah, are there any blind spots in terms of measurement? Is it difficult to set it up correctly?
It's pretty similar to Google and Facebook. You're going to be using UTMs, but because in B2B there's so many touch points, and often the person who's actually signing up to get the demo isn't necessarily the person that you targeted. So I'll give you an example. you can be targeting information technology guys at a large organization because they're the ones that you believe are going to be implementing your solution, right? And you can be targeting them, day after day, and they've seen your ad, and maybe even they're like, okay, this company, they have a really interesting solution. But by the time they're actually in the process of evaluating solutions, there might be a meeting where nobody's clicking on an ad. They're just talking about, okay, well, there's solution A, there's solution B, there's solution C. Oh yeah, and there's solution D. I keep seeing their ads all the time. I'm gonna ask my assistant to check them out as well. And so the assistant goes to the website and they sign up for a demo. And as far as the CRM is concerned, and as far as the tracking is concerned, we have a direct lead or an organic search lead. We don't have a LinkedIn lead. So I think adopting a sort of holistic view of what you're doing is important. Less for optimization. It's difficult to optimize for that, but more in terms of developing the tolerance for knowing that it's going to be very expensive. You're not necessarily going to be able to attribute every opportunity back to the LinkedIn ads, but it absolutely has an effect. I see it the most when I'm working with organizations that is their only channel. That they really they've decided to just focus on that. They haven't done anything else, and they have a very limited budget, and they're right here right now in terms of opportunities, and suddenly we're doing LinkedIn ads and they're right here. And you can see, more organic traffic, more direct traffic, more people signing up for demos that you can't attribute it to the LinkedIn ads, but it's having an effect. Yeah. So that's, I guess it's a challenge that I think requires an attitude of tolerance for the channel.
Yeah, and what about other sort of blind spots? So you mentioned a few. Anything else that you see businesses overlook when they start?
So I think there are two big mistakes that I see people make when they start to do LinkedIn ads. One is a sort of a mistake coming from over-experience in other platforms. So if you're very experienced in Google, if you're very experienced in Facebook, you're looking at LinkedIn and you're sort of expecting the activity, the processes to be similar. You're dealing with similar metrics. You're dealing with impressions, you're dealing with clicks, you're dealing with leads. But it's a very different animal in terms of the processes that you need to be undertaking on a daily, weekly, monthly basis in order to optimize, in order to maintain, in order to make sure that you're succeeding. In Google, the work is very meticulous. You're working in terms of optimization with Google. You're really kind of you're really optimizing on a day by day basis. You're adding excludes. You're finding new keywords, and the performance is pretty stable usually on Google. It's kind of like it goes like this. Maybe you see a dip. It goes like this. On LinkedIn, it's very erratic. You have all sorts of seasonality. People are starting jobs, they're leaving jobs. Right. There are different trends in technology that are really changing things. LinkedIn itself is, they're playing a lot with the algorithm because it's pretty new. So it's just really different. And the things that you expect going in, you need to put those expectations on the side and look at it as a new animal and kind of try different things in a different way and measure also in a different way. So that's, I guess, the other side of that is people coming in and then, let's say they are, they're accustomed to getting SQLs at, $1,000 per SQL on Google or $1,000 per SQL on Facebook. And suddenly here it could be more expensive, it could be different. And so you need to actually take a deep breath and understand that the costs are going to be different, but the audience is very different. It's, it really is the audience that you've decided that you're going after in terms of, the persona, in terms of the job titles, the company sizes that you're really interested in. I think another big mistake, sorry, I said two, but there's a third one. Another big mistake that companies make is sort of saying, well, we're really only interested in, the decision makers. We're really only interested in the CMO and the VP marketing and the director of marketing. And then they'll only target that and be surprised why it's not working. And I think, this is a strategic blind spot, more than just specifically to LinkedIn, but the decision-making process is going to be involving a lot of different stakeholders. And usually the VP marketing, the CMO, he's not going to be the guy clicking on the ads. He's not necessarily going to be the guy who's signing up for your demo. And if you want to influence that decision, you need to be targeting, broadly around this person, everybody that is on that team that's going to be making the decision to purchase that, piece of software or go with that specific service or something like that.
And of course, there's just fewer of them. So
there's just fewer of them, yeah. I guess that's the fourth thing that I would say is really, really important, is that you need to think about scale when you're talking about LinkedIn. The reach and frequency on LinkedIn is a lot lower than it is on Facebook and Instagram. People are just on it less, and they're on it for less time. There's nothing to do about it. That's just the way it is. Facebook is, I think it's the third most visited website in the world after Google and YouTube. So people are there, they're there often, and they're spending a lot of time there, less and less, but they're spending a lot of time there. On LinkedIn, it's less the case. So when you're looking at the audiences, let's say you have an audience of 100,000 people on LinkedIn versus 100,000 people on Facebook, your ability to reach these people and the frequency with which you'll reach these people on Facebook and Instagram is a lot. It's a lot easier. It's a lot faster on Facebook and Instagram than it is on LinkedIn. So you need to think about having scale there. If you're only targeting, 2,000 people or 5,000 people or 10,000 people, it's going to take you a while to reach those guys. So you want to think about the broadness of your audience. Yeah.
All right. You mentioned briefly that LinkedIn is changing. What are some of the ways? Where is it kind of changing?
Yeah, so LinkedIn really is having a moment right now. There's more people on it. The engagement has never been higher. I think, partly to do with people moving away from Facebook due to, what's going on there politically, the feelings of privacy, dissatisfaction with, just dissatisfaction with the social media platform in general. I feel that people are kind of having an exodus and going to all sorts of other niche platforms, one of them being LinkedIn. So right now, LinkedIn is having a bit of a moment. One of the things that I think that companies can do to sort of capitalize on that is really just, inform employees. I don't think any company should be saying, you all have to be on LinkedIn, but saying, if you're going to be on social media, why not go onto LinkedIn, represent the company? I think organizations should be instructing their employees on how to represent the organization on the social network. There should probably be some sort of unified look and feel. I see some companies doing this really well in terms of having, bringing in a photographer to take a picture of everybody, have the same, company colors in the background, having, the people from marketing write the taglines. It really is a place where you can be engaging with the general audience, and your employees can be engaging with the general audience where they are representing the company. And so it's something that I think that more organizations should be investing more in terms of educating, in terms of workshopping, in terms of helping, broadly across the organization. And that's marketing, that's sales, that's HR, but that's just, that's everybody. So if you're a graphic designer from a company that isn't necessarily known for their graphic design, but you believe that you have a great graphic designer that is doing great work for the company, encourage them to show, what they believe in and what the process was for the new logo. And this is, it's a great, this is the kind of stuff that companies spend tens and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars on in order to get across. And you can do that for relatively cheap if you encourage your, or no money at all, if you encourage your employees to be present there.
Yeah, that's a really, really good advice that I think we should be taking on.
I think, I think we all should. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything really currently like LinkedIn that's sort of emerging, or do we just have LinkedIn?
You do have some other, I guess, emerging platforms that could be interesting, like LinkedIn. Quora is having some awakening there around very specific questions that can be relevant to B2B. Twitter also has some advantages for certain B2B communities, but it's a lot more news-based. It's a lot more, right now, right here. But no, I actually don't think there's anything quite like LinkedIn right now. Since Microsoft purchased LinkedIn a few years ago, and people were like, okay, why? LinkedIn used to be known as this sort of annoying social network. I don't know if you remember this, but I had a LinkedIn profile 11 years ago or 12 years ago. And I think for the first few years, I maybe logged in once or twice, Somebody invited you and you went on and you put it there, and it was just sort of like there. And it sort of it had this reputation for just this is where you go for, it's kind of like, your resume, and exactly. you should have it. It doesn't hurt to have it, but you're not really spending a lot of time there. But right now there really is nothing quite like it. And they're investing heavily in the future of work. And if you think about it for a second, work is really changing. The way that people's career trajectories are going, the relationship that people have with their jobs, with their own careers, the way that people invest in their own careers, the sort of personal branding that people need to undertake nowadays in order to stand out in a very crowded space. There's nothing like that, like LinkedIn right now. And so you really see that they're capitalizing on that. You see that they're investing a lot in learning. I don't know if you've noticed it, but they bought Linda, which is a really interesting learning company, and they've been investing in education, in workplace education. I think we all know, the skills that we're using every day in our work, they didn't exist when we were in school, and I think that's not going to go away. I think that's actually going to be more and more the case. So as our careers become more and more dependent on us keeping always up to date with what's going on, both in our industry or in our local networks, I think LinkedIn is going to become even stronger. I think it's starting to have a moment, but I think that you're really going to see it in the next couple of years, 3 years, really, really have a moment.
Yeah, no, I can certainly see it happening, especially the e-learning and the people internally, there's us using it, and yeah, I can see the bright future that you're painting.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for really explaining it super clearly. It was really a pleasure to have you here, and I hope we can get you on again to maybe talk a little bit more about the specifics of LinkedIn advertising and
I'd love
like
to.
that. Yeah. Thanks so much. And
my pleasure. It's absolutely my pleasure.
And of course, we're sorry for all the noise in the background, but we have all our global teams coming together at Social Bakers this week, and it's really, it's now the kickoff is in full swing. So thanks for bearing through it, and see you next time.
Yeah, man.
Bye-bye.